Hey, folks, welcome back to the Traders4ACause podcast. My guest this week is a very good friend of mine. He happens to be a principal at Centerpoint Securities and a 4-year member of the board of directors at Traders4ACause. I'd like to introduce Mr. Matt Marino. Matt, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Zach. Thank you. How are you?
Should we tell them this is our fourth take?
This is our fourth take.
Our fourth take. We're having issues with silencing notifications on our computers, but you know what happens to the best of us.
Yes.
So how's the brokerage business, Matt?
The brokerage business has been very busy, as you might guess. Been a crazy year and a half, as it has been for everybody. So traders are busy, brokers are busy. It's been pretty wild.
So did your brokerage at Centerpoint break records in 2020 as far as new clients, as far as volume, anything like that?
All of it.
Yeah,
Yes. Yep. All of that. I
crazy
mean,
to think about, isn't it?
it is crazy. It is crazy. And, people obviously being stuck at home, trying to figure out different ways to make money because it was so unfortunate that so many people struggled. Yeah, it's been wild.
But yet
Absolutely.
traders ultimately, though everyone that I've talked to has done very, very well over the past year.
It was a remarkable year.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, to say
Yes.
the least.
To say the least. I've been doing this a long time, just like, some of the traders that that we both know, been doing it a long time, and we haven't seen anything like this in our lifetimes. It's a once in a lifetime deal. And yeah, many records have been broken, and there's been a lot of money made. It's been
Sure.
incredible.
So the traders are taking advantage of the situation for sure.
For sure. There were some serious layups for these people. Yeah, it was incredible. Absolutely.
So
So,
one of my goals of our interview today, just to chat a little bit, is to get a different perspective because, I talk to a lot of traders about their strategy, about how they got their start, about, what's working in the market currently. And we don't really get a broker's perspective very often. So I think it would be really valuable for people to kind of have an idea of what it's like looking in from the other side, especially from somebody with as much experience as you have on the brokerage side. So I guess my first question is a kind of a softball, but what do you think makes for a good broker when it comes to being a trader?
um, a good broker is someone that you don't know is there, really, is the best answer. I mean, I've been doing this a long time. Centerpoint, we've been doing this for 9 years. I've been doing it for over 20. Um, Being a broker that long, you want to give traders the right tools, right? You're trying to give them the right tools to succeed. Obviously, it's up to them to take those tools and work with them to build their own house. And the less that they have to call us or we hear from them, the better. Being quiet is what makes a good broker, honestly, but being ready if needed, understanding the urgency, from a trader standpoint, that's the key for us, is to just be ready. So, because it's a crazy sport, right? Trading. I mean, I've always said it's a lonely sport. From when I talk to people, I've talked to traders for all these years, talked to thousands of traders. They're lonely. They really are, and it's
Yeah.
emotional, and it's scary, it's happy, it's everything. And so to be a good broker, you're almost like the bartender, is what kind of what you turn into at times.
Right,
So
right.
there
Do
you
you
go.
feel that from Centerpoint's perspective and from your experience working for a brokerage, that's kind of one of the areas where Centerpoint is a little different than your typical run-of-the-mill TD Ameritrade or E-Trade, that you guys have a little bit more a higher touch uh, relationship with your clients?
I would definitely like to think so. I just think that we have a tremendous amount of respect for what traders are going through on a daily basis. In that respect, I hope comes through to them when we do have to have contact. Again, the less contact we have, the better. It means traders are doing good and there's no everything smooth sailing. But when they do need us, I'd like to think we're ready and we understand, the urgency, right? Because people call in, they're excited. If something's going wrong, orders not working, stuck orders. And especially this past year, because you have so many newer traders that don't understand this level of technology, let's say, in the trading world. They're
Sure.
just used to hitting buttons, and I've never really traded at any of the big brokers. I'm assuming they have issues too,
Hmm.
but ours can be a little more unique if it's an order that's not going live, or it's just something that seems mysterious to a client and they call us and they're panicking. um, to have, like you said, that the high touch, the personal touch, to be able to calm them down and deal with what's in front of us and get them straight. So I do hope people think we have that. It's something we definitely strive for over the years, for sure.
So you mentioned that what makes a good broker is one that is kind of there when you need them, but out of the way, lets you kind of do your thing, lets you trade, and only comes out when needed. So on the flip side of that, what do you think is the biggest impact that a broker can have on a successful trader?
I guess the thing I led off with was just being able to give people the right tools to go to do their job, right? I've heard the analogy that we're trying to give them the right clubs to have in their bag. If you're a golfer, right, you got to have the right club to hit the right shot. And we just to be a good broker to set up clients for success is to be able to have the full set of clubs they're going to need, um, whether that be the routing, different choices on routing, and that can get technical. So that's usually taken advantage of more from experienced traders. The newer traders, that's a bigger lift. In Centerpoint's case, we've always catered to that niche locate market, the short side. Being able to have those locates over the years was obviously a tremendous tool, a great club we put in the bag of many traders. So I guess that would be the answer, is just being able to offer the right things at the right times to let traders do their job.
Gotcha. Interesting. So a lot of the brokerage firms have gone commission free.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are many traders, especially newer traders, that don't really understand, the consequences of going commission free. Can you talk a little bit about how that structure of, compensation works, and how, they are essentially making money off of the order flow, and why there's a difference between that type of arrangement and actually paying per trade?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would have been even a better question 8 months ago when it really first happened, because so many traders have already educated themselves to understand the difference. People who came to us and said, "Are you guys going commission free because you have to?" We said no, for your own good, right? Because
Right.
you want the best execution, right? You're trying to save $5 a trade, or even $20 a trade, depending on the structure you choose, versus the execution. If you're trying to trade 5,000 shares and the execution's wrong, there's a couple $100 right there in slippage. So again, I think already enough of the general public, even the newer traders, understand there is a reason. Free isn't free, right? I mean, that's just the way of the world. It's just the way the world works. So I guess, to answer your question, I think most people have already figured out that it comes down to execution, and that's more important than the commission.
Sure. Getting a fill
So,
versus no fill. And
exactly, exactly.
I guess comparing the Robinhood trader to the Centerpoint trader is probably not a likely comparison. There's not going to be a whole lot of overlap there. But
Yeah, I mean, the successful Robinhood traders, that's kind of been our bread and butter over the years. It's kind of the clients who started, whether it's Robinhood or E-Trade or TD, or a bigger box broker. They kind of grow in their their technical approach to trading, and kind of promote themselves to a Centerpoint, or any of the direct access type brokers. Give them a little more tools, and gives them some more things to work with.
so you mentioned routing. Obviously you can get very technical talking about routing, but I've noticed that on a lot of the the larger platforms like E-Trade and TD Ameritrade, you really don't have options when it comes to routing. What types of things can you do as a trader with routing that can actually benefit your strategy when it comes to getting good executions or, following your particular strategy?
Great question. A tricky one to answer, only in the sense that routing is it can be so technical that it really, I talk to so many people, right? And have talked over the years to so many traders. And I guess I'll approach this answer as if I'm talking to a newer client calling in. They start going down the routing and they're asking those questions. They tend to they want a little bit less options, right? Because for them, kind of keep it a little more simple, stupid, right? Just
Sure.
give what's your best one, and we give them that. However, as you're trading for years, you start understanding, and this is what I tell people too, is just you really it's something you have to test all the different routes, and you should do that. You should, not all, but pick a good handful of routes and do tests, because some are going to execute different, but it depends on what kind of stocks you're trading, when you trade, what time of day, whether it's even pre-market or after hours. There's definitely better routes for those times. The size is the biggest factor. I mean, our biggest clients are using multiple routes to execute their orders, because that's going to make sense for them. If you're doing very small size, you're obviously not going to need that type of approach. However, I still think most people should do their own kind of testing. I mean,
Figure out what fits their style.
Figure out what fits their style, because they're going to find some that they're getting better executions depending on what they're trying to accomplish. Everyone has different styles of trading. We all know that. So you definitely want to test that to figure it out. Because, you hear so many traders say, some of the guys are so technical and some guys are super simple, even great traders on both sides of that spectrum. So you definitely have to get behind the wheel on that one.
Understood.
Yeah.
So from your point of view, in your 20 years working for a brokerage, what is it that you would say is the most common characteristic among the most successful traders that last the longest in this business when there's so much burnout?
That would be that they find themselves, right? Like, not to get crazy about it.
We're going meta here.
We're definitely going to go deep here, but it is the truth, right? They find what works for them and they just stick with it. They don't vary. They're not always trying to find the next thing. They find what is good. And I would like to say the best traders stay calm, but that isn't true either. I mean, I've been on the phone with some very excited, great traders, because for obvious reasons. Emotions are going nuts when you're trading, depending on the scenario. But it's the guys who figure out what their mentality likes and absolutely stick with it, because it is such a mental game. I mean, it's crazy from our seat to watch the psychology of it. It's kind of like I said, you were kind of the bartender, right? You watch people shimmy up to the bar and you're not sure what you're going to get until you start talking to them.
Right.
Everyone's different. But the guys who are comfortable with their approach to trading, their strategy, and they don't vary, those are the ones who are successful.
So you feel that it's advantageous to specialize in a niche versus trying to be a jack of all trades, essentially, when it comes to a trading strategy?
I have found that to be the most common characteristic. Yes. I mean, once they get so good at it, and again, we both know many traders who are super great at a niche, but then they'll vary out. They get so good at it that then they have the mental capacity to then try another thing or two, but they never let that one thing go. I mean, that's the bread and butter, right? So
it just became second nature, like riding a bike or
exactly. They're riding the bike, but then they started learning to juggle.
Sure.
So.
You want to tell everybody that you know how to juggle?
Well, I want to sneak that in there.
So at any brokerage firm, unless they're self-clearing, there are multiple clearing firms. Can you discuss the role of clearing firms when it comes to the broker-client relationship and how an account is opened?
It's another tricky one too. I mean, Centerpoint, we've had multiple brokers, or I'm sorry, multiple clearing firms over the years, right? And we're called an introducing broker. And I've had to explain that relationship so many times to clients, because if you just go to an e-trader, one of those, they are the clearing firm, they are the broker, it's all in
Right.
one.
Right.
We're a la carte, so we've offered all these different tools to clients over the years. It was more advantageous when we started Centerpoint to have all the different clearing firms, and most of our bigger clients, let's say, had multiple accounts. But what's been interesting is, again, in the short side niche, it's become a much more popular strategy, right? I mean, again, you and I have been doing this, we've been around this group for a long time.
Oh, for sure.
And this strategy's gotten bigger and bigger. In the beginning, it was mostly the multiple clearing firms. The advantage it offered to different clients was they had different easy to borrow lists, right? So you could save costs, and it made sense to have that. That's leveled off a lot more over the years because it's gotten to be such a more popular strategy.
Right.
So we're actually finding that people are consolidating more nowadays and simplifying, because there's enough balls in the air when you're trading anyway. So I don't know if I answered the question exactly, but
now, is there any advantage to having accounts in multiple clearing firms when it comes to margin requirements, or is that irrelevant?
No, that's true. Yeah, it does there too. It can certainly, different firms have different requirements, but again, especially of late, like GME, right? I mean, that kind of blew up everything. I mean, you've got, something, traders don't necessarily know that the brokers and the clearing firms, they have requirements too. And a lot of people learn that through the GME and Robinhood experience, right? That the regulators have requirements that all the firms have to have enough capital to have on hand for the stocks that all of their clientele is holding.
Sure.
So most of these firms' risk departments are elevating their requirements. Whether one's a little slower than the other one, kind of like the easy to borrow list, we're finding that they're all hitting certain levels together now. So that there was a bigger discrepancy before, and we're in a, it's always evolving, right? So it's interesting. It's been interesting to watch all these changes, and GameStop itself prompted a lot, just in the past 6 weeks or whatever it was. So,
well, I mean, I can imagine if you had accounts at multiple clearing firms and you were, carrying large positions, then it could be quite irritating if you got a maintenance call in one of them and weren't able to trade. If all your eggs were in one basket, you wouldn't have the ability to continue. And if that's your business, you might want to have a backup plan, because you can kind of get your hands tied temporarily.
No, 100%. But again, more clients are actually simplifying their own baskets, and just learning to play within the rules more. Right. No one loves rules, but they're there. We all got to deal with them.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we're the ones who get to pass down the bad news. But it is what it is.
Some of the best.
You are right. I mean, that's been the strategy for years, but there is an interesting little change going on right now.
Some of the best traders that I know, they set their own rules, and they're essentially set to be broken. This is a great rule to have until I see something that I just can't resist, and I'm going to go ahead and break my own rule.
And then I'm all in.
And I'm all in. Exactly. So talk to me about something that's happened over the years that would something that you've learned about this business that would shock traders to hear. Like just something, give me an Easter egg.
Gosh, I don't know that I have a great one that would shock traders. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. That's
Really? I thought everything I read on the internet is true.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen some shocking things on the internet that, I mean, we've had people call us and ask us to verify something they've read on the internet. Can you
Are you
verify this?
serious?
Yeah. It's like, well, here's a shocker. No. I, I can't talk about anything like that. Um, yeah. I mean, again, there's a lot of things, there's things that we have to do as brokers that I don't know if it's shocking, but regulators, right? We have to deal with regulators, right? So clients have to deal with the broker, brokers have to deal with the regulators. That's the food chain, right?
Sure.
And we get a lot of letters from regulators where inquiries that you have to answer a bunch of questions. And sometimes, it gets very, the information gets very detailed down to a particular trade. So there's clients that we have to research a trade that a client has done, the execution, all the details, and pass the information along. And that's going on behind the scenes about clients that have no idea that's going on. They may not have done anything wrong, but the way that particular execution flagged something somewhere in the system, their information got passed all the way up. And it would probably surprise clients to know that ever happens, and it could happen to them. But
What would trigger something like that?
there's different, just the way an execution might go off, it might look as though they're trying to manipulate the market somehow.
Oh, okay.
Right? Whether they're trying to cross a trade, if I don't want to give away any bad things people can do, but obviously, you can manipulate markets in certain ways.
Sure.
So sometimes a particular execution might look like that's happening. It may not be. It usually isn't. Sometimes it is. We've certainly had to flag some things that were not kosher, were not good.
Right.
But those are some things that go on behind the scenes. That we're constantly. It's part of our job that we're always doing. That obviously traders don't need to worry about. That's not their job. Their job is to just trade.
When you look at a lot of the new clients, well, first of all, I mean, what percentage of your clients would you say, Centerpoint's clients, are new traders versus seasoned veterans?
Over the past year, the percentage is definitely skewed.
Skewed high, of course.
Skewed high, exactly. That's a good question. Probably 75% newer. I mean, what's new, right? I mean,
Sure.
Trading 6 months, a year, 3 years versus the guys who've been trading for 15, 10 to 20. You know what I mean? So it's we definitely have a lot of clients who've been doing this a long time. But over this past year, it's again, the numbers have skewed themselves, which we all understand why.
So from your perspective with these newish traders, what do you see as some of the most common mistakes? And you guys kind of like have a peek behind the curtain. What do new traders do that they need to work on in order to make it last in this business?
Again, if I'm talking to somebody who calls in and is new, let's see, the two biggest mistakes I think a new trader makes. I'll start with these two. They don't get familiar enough with the platform before they start hitting buttons. Right. So they get all excited to start trading, think they're going to make all this money that they read about on Twitter before they actually learn how to use the tools. So they need to spend some time really getting familiar with the tools. And
mechanics,
then the mechanics, exactly.
Right.
And then the next one, which is super common, is just over trading. Right. They don't understand that not trading is a trade, right? And they just keep hitting buttons because they're just chasing, and they just think once I get in the right time, it's going to be the right time. And then at the end of the day, they've done way more trading than they thought. Their fees are way too high. They call and say, I can't believe, why are my fees this high? And I can look at it and quickly identify what the problem was. And I often tell people, it's like, look, I do not want you trading that much because you're not going to last. It's not going to be good for anybody. So over trading, if I was going to super simplify the answer, is the top. Not being familiar enough with the tools before they start putting on size. Like, again, I'll tell people, trade with 100 shares for a week, just so you truly understand how to use the routes, how to use the, all the functionality, all the mechanics, like you said.
Sure.
I mean, I got about, I don't know if this was 10, 12 years ago, I had a guy call in, asking a ton of questions, newbie questions, perfectly fine. But he was super confident, crazy overconfident, but had no idea what he was doing. And this is, I mean, you and I know each other well enough that I'm not always shy. I'll be blunt when it needs to be.
Sure.
And I literally told this guy, I said he was going to send 30 grand in, start his account, and he was going to take over the world. I told him, I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you send me 10 grand and I'll save you 20. And
I can't even picture you saying that to somebody. That's amazing.
And he goes, what? And I said, you are not ready to do this. And I honestly, you have to put in way more time than you think. And he never called back. And I'm sure he went somewhere else. And I cannot believe that he did. Those words didn't ring in his ears because he lost money. It was just not ready.
I read somebody said that when you're a beginner trader, that it's actually not good to have your account funded outside the pattern day trader rule. Like, it's better to have a smaller account that limits actually what you can do until you're more comfortable and better at it. That having the ability to trade as much as you want is not necessarily a good thing.
Right. Starting with 5 grand versus 30.
Exactly.
Well, if you're trying to be a day trader, that's impossible.
Yeah, it makes it hard.
Yeah. So if you try to be a day trader and fund with 25 grand, that's virtually impossible because you're not going to make money your first trade. We required 50 when we started because I think that's the accurate number, because you're going to lose some money. Even 30 isn't really enough to give someone a buffer to learn the mechanics, the trick, just the tools, how to do this. It's a hard job. It's doable. Again, I've been doing this long enough that when people say, day trading is just gambling. No, it's not at all. And neither is gambling if you're good at it. If you actually put in the, if you put in the time to, become a good card player, which you could call gambling, but you understand the mechanics and you approach it professionally, that's not gambling. Going into any business is a gamble. If you don't know what you're doing, it's a dumb gamble. But to answer your question, I would disagree. I would think, honestly, you need a little more money to have a buffer, because when you're right on that cusp, it just messes with your head. When you have 30 grand and you lose 5 the first day, you're totally panic button. You're hitting the buttons. You're losing more because you're trying to make it back. You're fighting the market, the classic scenario, because it's just so mental. So I actually think a little more buffer is better, but that's also why I would recommend, if you're starting, you have the buffer, but you trade small and you scale up or size up as you get consistent.
Sure. Limit your risk. Trade small. Makes sense.
Correct. But again, I wouldn't, starting with 5 grand, you're never going to day trade, right? So it's a whole different sport. Now you're swing trading, which is perfectly fine and great strategy for many people, but it's different. So
you said that you've been doing this for 20 years. How do you feel it's changed over the past, say, decade? How has trading changed?
Well, I think it's gotten a lot more professional from a broader scope. When I started, it was in literally 99, right? The tech boom, right? So
sure.
Bubble years ago. And then it was, there was a lot of gambling going on at that point, right? And then I've been doing it ever since. So I've seen everything between. And there was a big period in between where most of my clients, they didn't have many resources. So in the past 10 years, there were message boards and stuff, but the past 10 years, the explosion of content, chat rooms, communities that traders can get into and learn from each other and lean on each other, I think has changed it to where there is a lot more of a professional approach now from a beginner who is taking it serious, and seeking out those resources, seeking out those tools, because there's so many now for them to learn from. that, that it's been an interesting change. And it's, again, if I'm talking to someone who I know is a beginner and they're not part of a community of some sort, or I tell them that's the first thing I would recommend. And I don't recommend much as the broker on, as a direct access broker like I am. But getting a support system behind you and learning that way has been something that I've seen has been a complete game changer for beginners.
Do you think that saturation has created an environment where it's more difficult to find an edge? Do you think that could be a consequence?
Well, I mean, I guess maybe I would have thought that 2 years ago, and then last year happened. And then so many people made money who had just at least enough knowledge to take advantage of what was set up in front of them. You know what I mean? Which totally blew that theory out of the water. I mean, like no is the answer. There's just enough sloshing around in the markets all the time, right? That you can get in there and figure out how to take some out if you approach it correctly. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not viewing it as like a zero sum dog eat dog. You think that there's plenty of pie to go around.
Yes. I mean, come on. There really is so much money in the world that, yes. Because again, enough people don't approach it, don't want to put in the hard work. They're the ones who are going to feed the guys who do. I mean, it goes in any business, and any business, anything anybody ever does. The guys who really want to work hard and get good at it are going to prosper. So,
in your experience from the traders that you've watched come up, how long has it typically taken them to become profitable, if they do become profitable?
Good question. If you can tread water for a year and put in the effort, I think that's kind of a cutoff point. If beyond that first year you're not actually making money, but you're still treading water, you are likely going to always tread water. It's kind of a loose observation that I have.
Okay.
If after that first 12 to 16 or 18 months, right, that first year and a half, you've kind of treaded water, but then are getting comfortable with your wins versus losses, because it takes about that amount of time, right? You're always going to have, profit and loss, right? I mean, even the best traders lose money, right?
Of course.
Everybody. But having the mentality to be able to throw away the losses, zero in on what made the winners winners, it takes, in my, again, observation, that year to year and a half, 12 to 18 months. If you get over that hump and you're starting to make money consistently, I would say you've got a good chance at making a career, out of being a trader. But I've seen guys get stuck treading water for years, but they just can't give up the dream, and that's fair.
Everybody's heard that old adage that 90% of traders fail in the first year.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that goes along with any business. Isn't that the same adage for every business, right? Most new businesses fail. I mean, that's any business. It's
perhaps.
Just the way, so.
It's much softer to say that 90% of traders are still treading water after a year.
Yeah.
No,
90% aren't still treading water. I've seen that too.
Very interesting. There's an interesting perspective from the brokerage side where you can see, traders, from all walks, some that are maybe trading against each other. Does that put you in like an awkward situation when you see one client taking the opposite position of another client and you're kind of like stuck in the middle, or do you just kind of just have to turn away and not even think about it?
Yes. Both. It's a very interesting vantage point. That's for sure. That is for sure. And we've seen dramatic instances where it's obvious.
Sure.
One is on one side, the other, and then there's a million obviously blurred gray lines in between. but we have seen it. It is interesting to watch. And things can turn real quick too, right? One guy's on the winning side 1 second, and 5 minutes later, and some news came out, and now you're on the other side. So
yeah. So there's a common misconception, I think, among many traders. Of course, we've all heard people with their horror stories surrounding their brokerage firms. Obviously, Centerpoint is one of the good guys, in my humble opinion. But a common misconception, I think, is that the broker doesn't care whether the trader wins or loses because they're getting their commission either way. Can you completely dispel that and throw out the truth?
Well, I mean, it goes back to what I said to a new trader. I don't want you over trading just to generate commissions, because you're not going to make it, right? So, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because one thing traders don't understand, and I completely, like I said in the beginning as well, respect how hard it is to be a trader and the emotion that goes into it. Clients don't always understand that it's emotional on our side too, even to watch. I mean, watching accounts blow up is horrible. I mean, it's sad, and I've talked to the guys after they've lost their money, and heard the personal stories about how it's going to impact them. And
that's brutal.
It's brutal. I mean, it is horrible. It is so brutal. I mean, I would prefer the client who, finds their niche. Maybe they don't generate billions of dollars in commissions, but if they're winning and they're still trading, that means we're winning because they're still trading. Right. So, I mean, I definitely want everyone winning. That's the goal in our business, is that it's a win-win, because that means you are making money, which keeps you in the game, which means we're making money because you're still in the game. Right. So, yeah, as far as the not care part, people would be surprised to sit on this side and understand how emotional it can be just to watch, and to be a part of it. Again, I'll go back to the bartender analogy. You hear some sad stories, it's rough. Like it's no fun. I definitely don't like that part of it. It's been
all right. So I'm making a note here that if I wanted to become a broker, it's best to be a sociopath. Is that what you're saying? Like, to just
100%. 100%. I wish I was.
So you have to think about that. So Matt, we didn't mention this to the audience, but you've been on the board of directors at Traders4ACause for 4 years, and we've been working close together, putting together Traders4ACause events and everything. And it's been an amazing journey, and I want to obviously thank you for everything that you've done for us, and for being a part of the organization. And
tremendous honor.
Yeah, I mean, what are your feelings on when we're going to get back to Vegas? I got people begging. I mean, like, they want to go back this year. I'm like, it's just a little risky.
I know. Again, people don't really understand what goes on behind the scenes that you're doing.
Of course,
in the commitments that the charity has to put up in order to put these events on, even monetarily. Right. So I know we had this conversation, and I agree 100% that I would think this year is going to be just too soon. Right. I would definitely think fall of 22, we're all in. Fall of 21 is about, yeah.
It's made complicated too by the fact that we broke our fundraising records in 2020, going completely virtual, and obviously in the virtual space we have very low overhead, so it's making it even more clear that the importance of Vegas is not only to raise money, but it's to just get together. And I think that's what we've learned in talking with everybody. Everybody is just so excited to be together again and to break bread. And
when I talk to guys who say, I've always wanted to go, I just can't afford it or whatever, it's like, yes, you can. And I don't think you can afford not to go because it is so stinking awesome. I mean, that environment is just so positive and so beneficial in so many ways. I mean, like I said, trading is the most lonely sport I think, almost ever. I mean, to go through all that emotion sitting behind computer screens by yourself is hard. And to be able to get out and share that humanly with people who understand completely how that is, it's just the best long weekend ever for people. It is amazing. I mean, I got involved, right? I mean, Centerpoint's been a sponsor since the beginning. Obviously, we know the founders, and that was Centerpoint was tied into that as well of Traders for a Cause. But I would come home every year and just tell my family what an amazing environment it was, you know, and how excited I was. And then when I got a chance to join the board, just up that level. But man, people have to go. But I know people are begging this year, but I just think it's too soon to commit. But and I agree with you too, as far as the money we raised online was amazing. And I think, you know, we're just going to have to figure out how to do both, right? Virtually.
An incredible number of new followers too, people that didn't even know we existed and now attended our virtual events, and I hope they're enjoying them, and I hope they're enjoying the podcast. And you know, we're going to continue our outreach, and I said this to Nate, I think, you know, when we end up going back to Vegas, we might be looking at a bigger audience because I think more people know about us now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And not everyone can make it, right? People have commitments. So I understand you obviously physically can't make it, but at least like you said, the awareness is higher, you know, grow the community of Traders for a Cause. And, you know, I think it benefits so many people and so much stuff. And it's been awesome to raise money for these charities over the years. And just so cool. And thank you for your work, obviously.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. I enjoy every minute of what I do for this organization. It's especially the Vegas event and the conferences are somewhat of my baby. So I feel like the need to nurture them and to continue to build them and make them better and better every time we meet. And I hope that we've successfully done that in most people's eyes. So
are we going to call it, what would it be? If we miss Vegas this year, are we going to call it what? Traders for a Cause 9 next year? If it's in 22, would that be 9?
I think it's.
Weren't we 7? 8?
Last year was 7. So 2020 was number 7. This would be 8. I guess it would be the 9th annual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Your baby's getting big.
My baby's all grown up.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I want to thank you again for being with me today and for being a part of the podcast. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, and we do chat a lot. Typically not in front of a camera, so it was kind of an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
But I'm going to throw it out there. If people have questions that we didn't answer or we didn't cover today, you can certainly shoot the charity an email, info@traders4acause.org. And I can certainly relay those questions over to Matt, who will get back to you with any information that you might want. And I guess that's it. So until next time, I want to thank you all for joining us. And in the meantime, trade, profit, and make a difference. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Zach. Just put, I guess, principle.
Principal?
Yeah, principle is the good general term that I like to use because it sounds good and no one really knows what it means.
What the hell just happened? What the hell is going on with my computer? Good Lord. Hang on a minute.
What the hell, dude?
This is bullshit.
Who's your boss?
Your mama.
I don't want to talk about you.
You want to talk about me?
A little bit.
In front of my back?
In